Oh, yes. Pale blood. Well, you've come to the right place. Yharnam is the home of blood ministration. You need only unravel its mystery. But where's an outsider like yourself to begin? Easy, with a bit of Yharnam blood of your own. But first, you'll need a contract. Good. All signed and sealed. Now, let's begin the transfusion. Oh, don't you worry. Whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
You found yourself a hunter.
The lore of the hunter, the protagonist of the Yharnam cycle, begins not with a hero's lineage or a warrior's oath, but with a desperate, dying foreigner seeking a final cure. Unlike the citizens of Yharnam, who are born into the culture of blood, the hunter is an outsider, a stranger to the beast. They arrive at Iosefka's clinic under the shroud of night, suffering from an unnamed, terminal affliction. The lore of the foreigner's journey suggests that Yharnam's reputation for blood ministration had spread far beyond the mountain passes, becoming a whispered legend for those whom traditional medicine had failed. This sets the stage for the ultimate bargain. To receive the healing blood, the hunter must sign a contract, tethering their soul to the hunt before they even understand what the hunt entails. The first drop of the old blood administered by the blood minister initiates the spiritual siege. As the hunter drifts into a drug-induced slumber, they experience a harrowing vision. A monstrous, fur-covered beast rises from a pool of blood, reaching out to claim them. However, as the beast touches the hunter, it spontaneously combusts. This is the lore of the rejection of the scourge. It implies that the hunter's constitution, or perhaps the specific contract they signed, makes them incompatible with the standard bestial transformation. While the rest of Yharnam falls to the fur and the claw, the hunter's soul is claimed by something much higher. The arrival of the messengers, the small skeletal denizens of the dream, confirms this. They crawl over the hunter's body, marking them as a moon-scented entity, a tool of the Great Ones. The hunter wakes up in a clinic that has become a slaughterhouse. The lore of the first death is a critical turning point. In the hallway, the hunter encounters a scourge beast, a creature they are woefully unequipped to fight with bare hands. For most, this encounter ends in death, but for the hunter, death is merely a transition. Upon dying for the first time, the hunter does not vanish into the void. They awaken in the hunter's dream. This is the moment the protagonist ceases to be a mere human and becomes a dream-bound hunter. They are given their first trick weapon and firearm by the messengers, effectively being militarized by the dimension. The rise of the hunter is thus a process of systemic dehumanization. They are being rebuilt into a killing machine that can survive the very nightmare that consumed the city. The initial motivation of the hunter is defined by a single, cryptic note: seek pale blood to transcend the hunt. The lore of the pale blood quest is a masterpiece of manipulation. The hunter has no context for what pale blood is, yet they are driven by a biological and spiritual imperative to find it. This makes the hunter a tabula rasa, a blank slate, upon which the Great Ones can write their will. Every beast slain in central Yharnam and every drop of blood echoes absorbed is a step toward this transcendence. However, the hunter is also an observer of decay. As they move through the streets, they see the mirror images of what they could become. The mobs of Yharnamites, who still cling to their lanterns and pitchforks, hate the hunter as a blood-starved outsider, creating a sense of existential isolation. The scent of the moon that clings to the hunter is a biological marker that other characters in the game can sense. Figures like Eileen the Crow or Jura recognize the protagonist as a dreamer. The lore suggests that being a dreamer grants the hunter a unique form of refractive sanity. While the citizens of Yharnam go mad from the bestial reek, the hunter is protected by the cold light of the dream. This is the gift of the moon presence. It allows the protagonist to witness the most horrific cosmic truths, such as the Great One, amygdalae, or the blood moon, without their mind instantly shattering. The hunter is being cultivated like a rare flower in a garden of filth, kept pristine so that they can eventually bloom into something the cosmos can use. The act concludes with the hunter's first true victory over a cleric beast or Father Gascoigne. These battles are the trial by blood. By slaying Gascoigne, a man who was once a hunter but fell to the scourge, the protagonist is validating their superiority. The lore of the successor of the scythe reveals that the hunter is not just surviving. They are harvesting the strength of those who failed before them. They are the new blood in a stagnant world. The rise of the hunter is a climb over the corpses of the old guard, and the fall of Yharnam is the fuel for their ascent. The protagonist is the pinnacle of the healing church's failure and the first success of the moon's ambition. The legacy of the hunter in Part 1 is the birth of the Sovereign Slayer. They have survived the clinic, signed the contract, and claimed their first echoes. They are no longer the dying foreigner who crawled into Iosefka's operating room. They are a hunter of the dream, a creature of two worlds who belongs to neither. As they look out over the burning spires of Yharnam from the Great Bridge, they realize that the hunt is not a chore to be finished, but a nature to be embraced. The path to pale blood is open, and the hunter is the only one left with the eyes to see it. The second chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter explores the terrifying biological and spiritual price of their growing power. To the denizens of Yharnam, the protagonist is a moon-scented anomaly, but to the cosmos, the hunter is a psychic sponge. The lore of blood echoes is central to understanding the protagonist's transformation from a dying foreigner into a transcendent warrior. In the world of Bloodborne, blood is not merely a fluid that carries oxygen. It is a vessel for memory and a carrier of will. When the hunter slays a beast, they do not just take its life. They inherit its essence. The lore of the parasitic ascent reveals that every time the hunter stands over a fallen foe, they absorb the echoes of that creature's existence, its pain, its rage, and the remnants of its humanity. This process, facilitated by the hunter's mark, allows the protagonist to bypass the slow, natural progress of human training and achieve a supernatural evolution in a single night. This evolution is inherently vampiric. Unlike the old hunters who trained for decades in the arts of the blade and the gun, the protagonist is a fast-tracked godling. The lore of the Plain Doll's channeling explains that the hunter cannot process these echoes alone. To do so would be to invite the beastly scourge into the mind immediately, as the raw memories of beasts are corrosive to the human ego. Instead, the hunter returns to the dream, where the doll acts as a metaphysical filter. She takes the filth of the echoes and refines it into prowess. This is the alchemy of the soul. The hunter's strength, skill, and endurance are literally stolen from the thousands of lives they have extinguished. This creates a profound moral debt. The hunter's rise is numerically tied to the fall of Yharnam's population. The more the hunter grows, the more dead the city becomes. They are the apex scavenger of a dying civilization. The lore of cold blood, the thickened, stagnant blood found on corpses throughout the city, further emphasizes this parasitic nature. These are concentrated memories of those who died in despair. When the hunter crushes these droplets in their hand, they are consuming the past. This makes the protagonist a living library of slaughter. They carry within them the echoes of the cleric beast's roar, the father's grief, and the commoner's terror. This internal accumulation of will is what allows the hunter to wield weapons of immense weight or fire projectiles with impossible precision. However, this power comes with the weight of the beast. The lore suggests that as the hunter absorbs more echoes, they become more saturated with the very old blood that caused the plague. They are walking a razor's edge. They must become more than human to survive the night, but by doing so, they become less than human. The scent of the moon that defines the protagonist acts as a repellent against the typical transformation. In the lore, most Yharnamites turn into beasts because their human will is too weak to contain the eldritch echoes in their blood. The hunter, however, is hollowed out by the dream. Because their soul is tethered to the moon presence, there is a vacuum where their humanity used to be. The moon presence fills this vacuum with its own pale blood influence, allowing the hunter to absorb infinite echoes without sprouting fur or claws. This is the sanctuary of the void. The hunter is protected from becoming a beast only because they are becoming something much worse, a cosmic surrogate. They are being fattened with echoes for a purpose they do not yet understand. The protagonist's relationship with the rally system is a vital piece of martial lore. When the hunter is wounded, they can regain health by immediately striking back at their attacker. This is the bloodlust reflex. It is not a mechanical quirk. It is a biological reality of the moon-scented hunter. The hunter feeds on the fresh blood of their enemies to seal their own wounds. This creates a vicious feedback loop. The hunter is incentivized to be aggressive, to stay close to the carnage, and to bathe in the spray of the hunt. This is the erosion of the self. The protagonist begins to lose the human instinct for self-preservation and replaces it with a predatory instinct for regeneration through violence. By the time the hunter reaches the cathedral ward, they are no longer fighting to survive. They are hunting to feed. Furthermore, the lore of the hunter's insight begins to intertwine with their physical evolution in Part 2. As the hunter absorbs echoes, they also begin to accumulate knowledge of the deep. This is the dual-track ascension. The body grows strong on echoes, while the mind grows wide on insight. This makes the protagonist a bridge between planes. They are the only entity in Yharnam capable of existing in the physical slum and the eldritch dream simultaneously. However, the more insightful the hunter becomes, the more the world hurts them. The frenzy mechanic is the lore-based representation of the hunter's mind overheating from the truths they have stolen. They are a vessel that is being filled with too much pressure. The rise of the hunter is a race against the shattering of their own psyche. The act concludes with the hunter facing the blood-starved beast in Old Yharnam. This creature is a prophecy of the hunter's own potential future, a being so addicted to the blood that it has literally starved itself of everything else. By defeating it, the hunter claims the chalice, the key to the Themerian tombs. This marks the transition from a street hunter to a tomb prospector. The protagonist is no longer just cleaning the streets. They are exhuming the gods. The lore of Part 2 establishes the hunter as a temporal predator, one who consumes the old blood of the past to fuel a new godhood in the future. They have become the most dangerous thing in Yharnam, not because of their weapons, but because of their infinite capacity for absorption. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the normalization of the abomination. The protagonist has accepted that they must eat the souls of the dead to stay alive. They have become a ghoulish necessity. The moon scent has grown stronger. The echoes are screaming in their veins, and the plain doll is waiting with her hands outstretched, ready to turn the next batch of death into the next tier of power. The hunter is rising, but they are doing so by drowning the world in their own insatiable need for more. The fall of Yharnam is no longer a tragedy the hunter is trying to stop. It is the harvest the hunter is reaping. This concludes part 2 of the 10-part lore of the protagonist. We have explored the parasitic nature of blood echoes, the role of the doll in the hunter's evolution, and the shift from survival to predatory growth. The third chapter in the lore of the hunter focuses on the extension of the will, the relationship between the protagonist's changing anatomy and the mechanical horrors of the workshop. In Yharnam, a weapon is not merely a tool. It is a partner in the dance of death. The lore of the trick weapons reveals that the hunter's martial prowess is a form of symbiotic engineering. Because the protagonist is moon-scented and bolstered by blood echoes, they possess a physical strength and reaction speed that defies human biology. This allows them to wield oversized and transforming armaments that would be unwieldy or impossible for a standard human. The hunter does not just carry a blade. They inhabit the weapon, using the rally instinct to fuel a combat style that is perpetually in motion. The lore of the trick, the ability of a weapon to change its form, is a reflection of the hunter's own dual nature. Just as the protagonist exists as both a human and a dream-bound entity, their weapons exist in two states. One form is typically designed for crowd control or bestial shredding, like the serrated edge of the saw cleaver, while the other is meant for high-impact execution. This mechanical duality is the only way to combat the erratic evolution of the scourge. The hunter must be as fluid as the blood they spill. This creates a cognitive synchronization. The hunter's brain must be tuned to the timing of the transformation. The lore suggests that the sound of the clink and whir of the weapon's gears becomes a psychic anchor for the hunter, preventing them from falling into a mindless, blood-drunk trance during the heat of battle. Central to this part of the lore is the infusion of malice through blood gems. As the hunter descends into the cathedral ward and beyond, they begin to slot crystallized thoughts into their weapons. These gems are the literal calcified rage of the creatures the hunter has slain. The lore of the sentient steel reveals that by adding these gems, the hunter is making their weapon hungry. A weapon infused with a cursed heavy abyssal gem, for example, gains immense power but eats the hunter's own stamina or durability. This mirrors the protagonist's own journey. They are upgrading their tools by feeding them the essence of the nightmare. The weapon becomes a living extension of the hunter's parasitic evolution. By the midpoint of the night, the hunter is no longer a person holding a sword. They are a unified biomechanical organism designed for the sole purpose of deicide. The hunter's firearms represent the metaphysical interruption of the hunt. In Yharnam lore, guns are not meant for lethal damage. They are meant to parry the soul. Using quicksilver bullets, which are fused with the user's own blood, the hunter fires at the precise moment an enemy commits to an attack. This interrupts the target's nervous system, leaving them open for a visceral attack. The lore of the visceral is perhaps the most gruesome aspect of the protagonist's anatomy. The hunter does not simply stab the enemy. They reach inside the ribcage and rip out the very echoes of the creature. This is the primal extraction. It is the ultimate expression of the hunter's dominance over the blood. To perform a visceral attack is to assert the moon's will over the beast's flesh. The hunter's garb also tells a story of atmospheric adaptation. From the standard hunter set with its blood-repelling leather to the black church garb designed to prevent the spread of the scourge, the protagonist is constantly cloaking themselves in the history of Yharnam's failure. The lore of the armor of the mind explains that these clothes provide physical resistance, but more importantly, they provide frenzy resistance. The hunter is literally wrapping themselves in the church's secrets to protect their sanity. However, as the hunter switches to more eldritch attire, like the choir set or the Canehurst armor, the lore suggests a shift in allegiance. The protagonist is no longer a tool of the local police force. They are becoming a knight of the cosmos, preparing their body for environments that exist outside of terrestrial physics. Furthermore, the hunter's tools, the spells of the game, represent the encroachment of the arcane on the protagonist's body. Items like Augur of Ebrietas or a Call Beyond require the hunter to use their own internal insight to manifest cosmic horrors. The lore of the phantasm symbiosis suggests that the hunter is allowing cosmic parasites to briefly inhabit their sleeve or their mind to strike at foes. This is the final frontier of dehumanization. The hunter is no longer relying on steel and gunpowder. They are using interdimensional geometry to kill. Their anatomy has become a temple for the Great Ones. The rise of the hunter's arcane power is the fall of their human limitations. They are becoming a walking nightmare, a being who can summon the stars while standing in a gutter of filth. The act concludes with the hunter entering the forbidden woods. Here, the mechanical nature of the city is replaced by the biological horror of the snakes and the shadows. The hunter's weapons, once clean and polished in the workshop, are now smeared with the truth of the woods. The lore of Part 3 establishes that the hunter is a master of adaptation. They have moved from citizen to slayer to arcane channeler. The trick is no longer just in the weapon. The trick is the hunter themselves, a creature that can shift its form and function to survive any layer of the nightmare. They are the living key to the mysteries of Byrgenworth, and their anatomy is the only map they need to reach the Lake of the Moon. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the obsolescence of the human hand. The protagonist has become so proficient with these tools of transcendence that they can no longer imagine a world without them. They have married the blade and vowed to the blood. As they stand at the gates of the ancient academy, the hunter is a titan of the workshop, a being whose will is perfectly forged into the steel they carry. The fall of their old life is complete. There is only the hunt, the weapon, and the infinite blood that binds them together. The fourth chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter examines the psychological transformation that occurs as the protagonist begins to see the true nature of the world. In the lore of Yharnam, physical strength is a crude tool. The ultimate evolution is the growth of internal eyes. This is the lore of insight, a measurement of the hunter's proximity to the eldritch truth. While blood echoes bolstered the hunter's muscles, insight expands the hunter's consciousness. The protagonist begins as a blind traveler in a city of monsters, but as they slaughter great ones and witness cosmic horrors, their perception shifts. They are no longer just walking through streets of stone. They are navigating a psychic landscape where the walls between dimensions have worn thin. The rise of the hunter's insight is the fall of their comforting human ignorance. This seeing is not a gift. It is a cognitive infestation. The lore of the madman's knowledge reveals that the hunter is literally consuming the fractured thoughts of those who went insane trying to understand the cosmos. When the hunter uses these items, they are downloading the trauma of the Great Ones into their own mind. This leads to the visual revelation. At low insight, the cathedral ward is a Gothic graveyard. At high insight, the hunter can see the lesser amygdalae, monstrous spider-like entities, clinging to the very spires they just walked past. This creates a profound ontological horror. The hunter realizes that the world they were fighting to save was never theirs. They were merely an ant crawling across the skin of a god. The protagonist's sanity becomes a finite resource, a barrier that is slowly being eroded by the weight of the truth. The relationship between insight and frenzy is the most dangerous aspect of the hunter's anatomy in Part 4. The lore of frenzy suggests that it is not a physical wound, but a psychic overload. When the hunter sees something that the human brain is not evolved to process, like the brain of Menses or the Winter Lanterns, their consciousness short-circuits. The blood literally spikes from their body in a violent, internal rejection of reality. Because the hunter has moon-scented protection, they can survive this experience, but it leaves scar tissue on their soul. The more insight the hunter possesses, the lower their frenzy resistance becomes. This is the price of knowledge. To see the world clearly is to be vulnerable to its madness. The protagonist is becoming a lighthouse in the dark, but the light they emit is attracting the predators of the void. Furthermore, the lore of the sound of the cosmos reveals that the hunter's hearing begins to change. At high insight, the hunter can hear the hidden cries of infant great ones and the ethereal music of the dream. The protagonist is tuning into a frequency that Master Willem of Bergenworth spent a lifetime trying to reach. However, while Willem was content to sit in a chair and observe, the hunter is acting. This makes the protagonist the embodiment of Willem's philosophy. They are the eyes that have been given hands. The fall of Bergenworth was caused by a lack of action. The rise of the hunter is caused by the violence of vision. The hunter does not just look at the great ones. They look at them through the sights of a gun. The Carol runes represent the transcription of the truth onto the hunter's very spirit. The lore of the mind-etching explains that these runes are the utterances of the great ones translated into symbols. By using the rune workshop tool, the hunter memories these sounds into their consciousness. This provides spiritual buffs, increased stamina, more blood from kills, or resistance to poison. This is the linguistic evolution. The hunter is literally rewriting their own soul using the language of the stars. They are no longer a human being. They are a walking sentence written in the alphabet of the gods. This makes the protagonist an anomaly to the rest of the world. To the Yharnamites, the hunter sounds like madness. To the great ones, the hunter is starting to sound like family. The act concludes with the hunter's arrival at the lunar lake to face Ram, the vacuous spider. This encounter is the veil-breaker. Ram acts as a psychic dam, holding back the true horror of the blood moon from the common populace. When the hunter slays Ram, they are not just killing a monster. They are destroying the illusion. The lore of the red moon's descent reveals that the pale blood sky has been there all along, hidden by Ram's vacuous silence. As the hunter stands on the water, watching the red moon dip toward the horizon, their insight reaches a critical Massachusetts. They can finally see the Queen of Yharnam standing in the distance, weeping blood. The hunter has ascended past the need for human sight. They are now seeing through the third eye of the nightmare. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the loneliness of the enlightened. The protagonist can now see the amygdalae, they can hear the voices, and they can sense the gods, but they can no longer talk to the people. The common citizens of Yharnam are now just insects to the hunter, blind creatures crawling in the dirt of a world they don't understand. The rise of the hunter's perception has severed them from the human race. They are the observer of the end times, the only one with the insight to know that the night is far from over, and the blood is only the beginning. The fall of their human perspective is finalized. They are now a child of the cosmos, waiting for the mother to call them home. The fifth chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter documents their transition from a street-level executioner to a cosmic archaeologist. While the streets of Yharnam are drowning in the current blood, the protagonist realizes that the truth is buried in the layers of the earth. This is the lore of the Chalice dungeons and the tomb prospecting phase of the hunter's journey. By utilizing the ritual altars in the dream, the hunter projects their consciousness into the Themerian labyrinths, vast, ancient vaults that predate humanity. The lore of the ancestral descent reveals that the hunter is not just exploring caves. They are auditing the crimes of an ancient civilization. The Themerians were the first to serve the Great Ones, and their fall provides the blueprint for Yharnam's destruction. For the hunter, the dungeons are a trial by history, a place where they must face the original scourge to understand their own new blood. The physical toll of tomb prospecting on the hunter's anatomy is profound. The air in the labyrinths is thick with tomb mold, a fungus that grows on the rotting remains of the Great Ones. The lore of the calcified environment suggests that the hunter's lungs and skin become hardened by the stagnant, ancient atmosphere. Within these depths, the hunter encounters the Themerian Watchers and undead giants, entities that have been preserved by the blood for millennia. This forces the protagonist to adopt a primitive survivalism. The trick weapons that felt modern in the city feel like relics here. The hunter begins to utilize old-world materials, such as yellow backbones and bastards of Lauren, to conduct rituals. This is the ritualization of the hunter. They are no longer just killing. They are invoking the ancient laws of blood and bone to open deeper doors. Central to the protagonist's evolution in the dungeons is the discovery of the source. Deep within the Lauren and his chalices, the hunter witnesses the cross-pollination of the beastly scourge and the celestial void. The lore of Lauren's extinction tells the hunter that Yharnam is not unique. Entire civilizations have been swallowed by the sand and the blood before. This realization shifts the hunter's perspective from local hero to universal witness. The protagonist begins to see themselves as a symptom of a recurring cosmic disease. The Tomb Prospector set, with its heavy lanterns and reinforced leather, represents the hunter's commitment to the deep dark. They are mining the past for the echoes of the gods, becoming a vessel for a power that is both ancient and terrifyingly other. The lore of the defiled chalice represents the hunter's nadir of vulnerability. In these cursed layers, the hunter's health is halved by a metaphysical weight. This is the standardization of the soul. The labyrinth shrinks the hunter's vitality, forcing them to rely entirely on perfect execution. The lore of the cursed and defiled suggests that the ancient gods are testing the hunter's resolve. To survive the defiled labyrinth and defeat the watchdog of the old lords, the hunter must achieve a state of martial purity. Their rise in the dungeons is a stripping away of the human ego. They become a ghost of the catacombs, a silent killer who can navigate the dark by the scent of the blood alone. They are no longer a foreigner to the blood. They have become its primary scholar. Furthermore, the hunter's encounter with the Queen of Yharnam at the bottom of the Themerian Ihil tomb is the meeting of the two eras. The Queen, with her white dress stained by the blood of her stillborn god, is the progenitor of the nightmare. By defeating her, the hunter is not just winning a fight. They are severing the umbilical cord of history. The lore of the Yharnam stone, the trophy earned from her defeat, is the seal of the grave. It signifies that the hunter has outgrown the Themerian past. They have consumed the history of the old world and are now ready to write the history of the new. The fall of the Themerians is finalized by the hunter's hand, clearing the way for the hunter's own divine ascension. The dungeons also introduce the hunter to the Great Chalice, where the lore of the cosmos and the sky are one, is literalized. Here, the hunter walks through halls filled with celestial emissaries and glowing, fungal growths. This is the transition to the astral. The protagonist realizes that the deepest part of the earth is actually connected to the stars. The geography of the dream is a loop. This shatters the hunter's remaining terrestrial logic. They understand now that they are not descending into the ground, but ascending into the mind of the Great Ones. Their anatomy has become interstellar. The auger of Ebrietas they use is no longer a tool. It is a handshake with the void. The act concludes with the hunter returning to the surface of the dream, their pockets full of red jelly and abyssal gems. They have ransacked the past and returned with the keys to the future. The lore of Part 5 establishes the hunter as a temporal sovereign. They have conquered the old world of the Themerians and the dead world of Lauren. They are now heavy with the weight of eons. As they look at the burning workshop, they see it not as a home, but as a temporary nest. They have seen the root of the tree, and they know that the fruit is almost ripe. The rise of the hunter is now inevitable, for they carry the collective power of every civilization that the blood has ever touched. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the death of the individual. The protagonist is no longer a person with a name or a past. They are the sum of the labyrinth. They are the end product of millions of years of blood refinement. As they prepare to face the nightmare of Menses, they do so with the cold, ancient eyes of a Themerian king and the insatiable hunger of a Great One's child. The fall of their human identity is complete. They have become the avatar of the chalice, the one who will finally drain the world of its last drop of eldritch meaning. The 6th chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter explores the detour into the frozen, aristocratic nightmare of forsaken Canehurst Castle. This is the lore of the Forbidden Taint and the protagonist's intersection with the Vilebloods. While the Healing Church represents a religious corruption of the blood, Canehurst represents a sovereign and hedonistic one. By discovering the Canehurst summons, a letter addressed specifically to the protagonist, the hunter is invited into a lineage of blood drinkers who once stood as the antithesis to the executioners of the church. The lore of the Vileblood contract reveals that the hunter is not just a tool of the moon, but a potential consort of the night. By kneeling before Annalise, queen of the Vilebloods, and imbibing the corrupted blood, the hunter's anatomy undergoes a radical, aristocratic shift. They are no longer just a slayer of beasts. They have become a noble of the nightmare, tainted by a strain of blood that the church spent centuries trying to erase. The physical manifestation of this taint is found in the Chickage and the Rider Palish, weapons that require the hunter to use their own blood as a catalyst for destruction. The lore of the Blood Sheath explains that the hunter is now capable of harmonizing their own life force with the steel. When the hunter draws the Chickage through their palm, they are painting the blade with the forbidden blood of Canehurst. This initiates a biological sacrifice. The weapon drains the hunter's vitality in exchange for a lethality that can cut through the spiritual armor of the church. This represents a fracture in the hunter's identity. They are utilizing a power that is heretical to the very institutions that built the city. The rise of the hunter as a Vileblood is a betrayal of their role as a holy hunter, showing that the protagonist is becoming a free agent of the blood, willing to consume any power, no matter how cursed, to reach the end of the night. Central to this part of the lore is the conflict of the masks. Canehurst is a place of ghostly echoes, where the hunter must fight the martyr Logarius, the frozen sentinel who sacrificed his own freedom to keep the Vileblood secret buried. By defeating Logarius and donning the crown of illusions, the hunter breaks the seal of reality. The lore of the illusion breaking suggests that the hunter's internal eyes insight are now strong enough to see through the psychic shrouds placed by the church. This makes the protagonist a destroyer of dogma. They have looked past the miracle of the church and the history of the executioners to find the cold, bloody truth of the aristocracy. The hunter is now cloaked in the silver and velvet of the Vilebloods, a predatory dandy who moves with a grace that is both beautiful and terrifying. Furthermore, the hunter's involvement with the blood dregs reveals the vampiric ambition of their journey. As a Vileblood, the hunter is tasked with harvesting the dregs found in the blood of other hunters. The lore of the deep-sea spermatozoa, the visual representation of the dregs, implies that the Vilebloods are seeking to create a child of blood, a new great one born from the union of human royalty and the eldritch void. The protagonist is the harvester of the seed. This adds a reproductive layer to the hunter's parasitic evolution. They are not just killing for echoes. They are collecting the genetic material for a new era. This makes the hunter a participating member in the cosmic cycle of rebirth, even if they are doing so as a mercenary for a dying queen. The relationship between the hunter and the executioners, specifically Alfred, represents the clash of ideologies within the protagonist's own soul. If the hunter chooses to help Alfred reach the queen, they are witnessing the self-destructive fanaticism of the church. The lore of the pulverized queen, where Alfred smashes Annalise into a pile of living flesh, is a visceral reminder of the brutality of faith. However, because the hunter is dream-bound, they can take the queen's fleshly remains to the altar of despair to resurrect her. This is the mastery over death. The hunter has reached a level of power where they can undo the acts of the church. They are no longer a subject of the world's laws. They are the editor of the world's history. The fall of the executioners is the ascension of the hunter's autonomy. The lore of the Canehurst summons also implies a predestined path. The summons is addressed to the foreigner at Iosefka's clinic. This suggests that the Great Ones or the Vilebloods knew the hunter was coming. The protagonist is a guided missile of history. Every detour they take, whether to the frozen castle or the forbidden woods, is part of a script written in the blood. The rise of the hunter as a vile blood is not an accident. It is the refinement of their moon-scented blood into something royal. By the time the hunter leaves Canehurst, they are rich with the blood of thousands of blood-sucking ticks and ghostly maidens. They carry the corruption of the nobles in their veins, making them a prismatic horror that reflects every dark corner of Yharnam's past. The act concludes with the hunter standing on the rooftops of Canehurst, looking out at the distant, red moon. The forbidden blood of the vile bloods has darkened their spirit. The lore of Part 6 establishes the hunter as a consummate heretic. They have rejected the sun of the church for the cold moon of the castle. They have drank from the forbidden cup and found it sweet. The fall of the aristocratic age is complete, and the hunter is its sole beneficiary. They carry the queen's honor and the executioner's speed, a combination of style and slaughter that makes them the most refined killer the night has ever seen. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the erosion of moral alignment. The protagonist is no longer good or bad. They are blood-saturated. They have become a collection of stains. The vile blood taint is just one more layer of sovereignty they have claimed for themselves. As they return to the main path of the hunt, they do so with a vile purpose, ready to stain the cosmos with the same forbidden blood that once made Canehurst a kingdom of nightmares. The rise is now a flood, and the hunter is the tide that will wash away both the holy and the profane. The 7th chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter marks the definitive departure from the physical stone of Yharnam and the entry into the primary consciousness of the Great Ones. This is the lore of the Nightmare of Menses, the final harrowing climb into the heart of the school that sought to beckon the moon. By entering this plane, the hunter is no longer a slayer of beasts, but a harvester of gods. The lore of the psychic battlefield reveals that the nightmare is a landscape made of solidified thought, a place where the hunter's own insight becomes a physical weight. As the protagonist descends the jagged, gravity-defying cliffs toward the Menses ritual loft, their anatomy is subjected to the ultimate test of cosmic pressure. This is the final descent of the ego, where the hunter must shed the last remnants of their human identity to survive a world that views human biology as raw material for evolution. The physical manifestation of this madness is the brain of Menses, a colossal, multi-eyed organ that hangs in the darkness, radiating a gaze that causes instant frenzy. The lore of the brain-dead evolution suggests that the school of Menses succeeded in creating a great one, but it was a failure of form, a mass of rotting sentient nerves. For the hunter, this encounter is a mirror of the future. The brain is what happens when insight is gathered without the transcendental resistance provided by the hunter's dream. The protagonist, however, is capable of standing before this horror. By utilizing the make a gesture, deep respect, toward the brain in the darkness, the hunter demonstrates a communication with the void. They are no longer terrified of the madness. They are acknowledging it. This earns them the moon rune, the highest symbol of their connection to the moon presence. The rise of the hunter is thus a process of developing a stomach for the impossible. Central to the protagonist's journey through the loft is the hunt for Michaelash, host of the nightmare. Michaelash represents the intellectual cowardice that the hunter has overcome. While Michaelash hides in a maze of puppets and skeletons, babbling about Kos and eyes, the hunter is the pragmatic god-killer. The lore of the Michaelash duel is a clash of realities. Michaelash lives in a world of theory and ethereal whispers, but the hunter brings the steel of the workshop into the dream. By slaying Michaelash, the hunter is extinguishing the last candle of the healing church. They are closing the book on human scholarly ambition. The hunter does not want to talk to the cosmos. They want to inherit it. This makes the protagonist the executioner of philosophy, the one who proves that action is the only true insight. The lore of the Shadows of Yharnam, appearing as common enemies in the nightmare, reveals the temporal collapse of the hunter's journey. These entities, once the elite guardians of the queen, are now mere speed bumps for the protagonist. This signifies the hunter's power scaling beyond history. The hunter has outgrown the legendary guardians of the Themerian age. Their anatomy, saturated with abyssal gems and blood echoes, has reached a critical density. They move through the nightmare with the weight of a star. The scent of the moon has become a roar that the entities of the nightmare can sense from miles away. The protagonist is the predator of the astral plane, a being who has turned the nightmare into their own hunting ground. Furthermore, the hunter's arrival at the Murgo's loft, middle and the confrontation with the wet nurse represents the intervention in the divine birth. Murgo is the formless child of the Great One, a source of infinite grief that sustains the nightmare. The wet nurse is its guardian. By slaying the wet nurse, the hunter is performing a cosmic abortion. This is the most profound sin and the most vital necessity of the hunt. The lore of the silence of the infant explains that the hunter has stilled the nightmare. They have stopped the music. This act of supreme violence is what triggers the nightmare slain notification. Not for a beast, but for a dimension. The hunter has killed a world to satisfy the terms of their contract. Their rise is now total, as they have proven they can subdue the very offspring of the Great Ones. The 1/3 of umbilical cord obtained from the wet nurse is the physical proof of deicide. The hunter now carries the biology of the beginning in their hand. The lore of the cord consumption suggests that the hunter is preparing their palate for the final transformation. They are no longer eating the blood of beasts. They are eating the raw concept of godhood. This changes the hunter's internal chemistry. Their insight is no longer just vision. It is substance. They are building a body that can house the pale blood moon. The fall of their human limitations is so complete that the vacuum left behind is pulling the moon presence toward them like a magnet. The protagonist is the empty cradle waiting to be filled. The act concludes with the hunter returning to the hunter's dream, only to find the workshop in flames. The mission in the waking world is over. The nightmare of Menses has been dismantled. The school is dead, and the child is silent. The lore of Part 7 establishes the hunter as an astral conqueror. They have climbed the highest spire of the mind and looked down upon the curvature of reality. They are heavy with the grief of Murgo and the madness of Michaelash. As they walk through the burning garden toward the great tree, they are no longer moon-scented. They are the moon. The rise has reached the atmospheric limit, and the only thing left is the final descent into the heart of the dream itself. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the sovereignty of the silence. The protagonist has silenced the cries that have plagued Yharnam for centuries. They have become the great silencer. They stand at the edge of existence, a being of pure will and refined slaughter. The fall of the nightmare is their ascension to the throne. As the smoke from the workshop rises into the pale blood moon, the hunter prepares for the audience they have earned. They have killed the past in the dungeons, killed the church in the city, and killed the future in the nightmare. Now, they must face the present, the host and the god, who have been watching their rise with a mixture of hunger and fear. The 8th chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter documents their forced descent into the hunter's nightmare, a realm of eternal retribution that serves as the psychic shadow of Yharnam. While the protagonist has spent the night ascending toward godhood, this detour into the old hunter's DLC represents a temporal reckoning. To enter this realm, the hunter must possess the eye of a blood-drunk hunter, an item that signifies their own proximity to madness. The lore of the purgatory of the past reveals that the hunter is not just a hero, but a scion of sin. By being claimed by the lesser amygdala outside the cathedral ward, the protagonist is dragged into a world where the first hunters are trapped in a loop of slaughter. This is the moral mirror of the journey. The hunter sees what happens to those who love the hunt too much. They become the very beasts they once despised, preserved in a living hell for the amusement of the Great Ones. The physical encounter with Ludwig, the Holy Blade, is the most profound anatomical warning for the protagonist. Ludwig represents the highest fall. He was the paragon of the church, a man who found light in the blood, yet in the nightmare, he has become a hideous, horse-like abomination. The lore of the Holy Moonlight Sword reveals that the hunter's own trick weapons are merely shadows of this original, celestial blade. When the hunter slays Ludwig, they are inheriting the burden of leadership. They are taking the moonlight from the hands of the corrupted and claiming it for their own ascension. This is the theft of the legacy. The hunter realizes that faith did not save Ludwig. Only will can survive the nightmare. The protagonist's rise is fueled by the deconstruction of their idols. They are stripping the old hunters of their gear and their myths to build a new legend that is untainted by the church's hypocrisy. The journey through the research hall provides the hunter with the genetic context of their evolution. Here, the lore of the living failures and the enlarged heads patients shows the protagonist the discarded prototypes of the human race. The church was trying to grow eyes on the inside through water and screams. The hunter, however, has achieved this through violence and insight. This makes the protagonist the successful experiment. They are the only patient who survived the treatment and kept their sanity. The Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower encounter is the climax of the secret. Maria, who was the model for the plain doll, represents the guilt of the hunter. By defeating her, the protagonist is killing the memory that haunts Gehrman. They are cutting the ties to the human past. The lore of the Rakuyo, Maria's weapon, suggests that the hunter is now comfortable using pure skill without the crutch of bloodfire, proving their physical perfection. The final descent into the fishing hamlet is the hunter's baptism in the original sin. Here, the lore of the desecration of Kos is laid bare. The hunter sees the parasites that have infested the villagers and realizes that the scourge began as an act of genocide by the first hunters. The protagonist is the inheritor of the crime. To cleanse the nightmare, the hunter must face the orphan of Kos, a great one born of a corpse, weeping into the sea. The lore of the childhood of grief explains that the orphan is the source of the curse. By slaying the orphan, the hunter is performing an act of ultimate mercy. They are releasing the spirit from its cycle of vengeance. This is the atonement of the slayer. The hunter has moved beyond hunting for echoes to hunting for peace. They have settled the debt that Gehrman and Lawrence owed to the cosmos. Furthermore, the milkweed rune and the Kos parasite weapon represent the hunter's total biological surrender. If the hunter chooses to embrace these items, they undergo a Lumenwood transformation. Their head becomes a mass of glowing, celestial stalks, and their body moves with the fluidity of the sea. This is the final break from humanity. The hunter is no longer a mammal. They are a celestial hybrid. They have bypassed the failures of the research hall and achieved a stable mutation. This makes the protagonist the emissary of the void. They have internalized the nightmare so completely that they can now manifest its parasites at will. The rise of the hunter in the nightmare is the dissolution of the skeletal frame. They are becoming water and light. The lore of the accursed brew and the Simon's Bowblade suggests that the hunter has become a confessor for the dying. As they collect the secrets of the old hunters, they are archiving the truth. The protagonist is the last witness of the hamlet. They know why the sea is salty and why the moon is red. This forbidden knowledge gives the hunter a leverage over the moon presence. They are no longer just a pet in the dream. They are a witness who knows the master's sin. The fall of the curse is the rise of the hunter's sovereignty. They have survived the purgatory that claimed everyone else, proving that their soul is more resilient than even the greatest heroes of the healing church. The act concludes with the silence of the beach. After the nightmare-slain message appears for the orphan, the black shadow on the corpse of Kos disappears. The sun, a real pale sun, begins to rise over the ocean. The hunter has broken the loop. The lore of Part 8 establishes the hunter as the redeemer of the hunt. They have walked through the hell of their ancestors and come out the other side with clean hands and an eldritch mind. They are heavy with the moonlight of Ludwig and the grief of Maria. As they return to the dream, they are no longer just moon-scented. They are curse-broken. The final phase of the night is now here, and the hunter is the only one left who can end the dream, because they are the only one who has survived the nightmare. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the ascension through forgiveness. By killing the orphan, they have forgiven humanity for its curiosity. They have become the judge of the cosmos. The fall of the old hunters was a warning, and the hunter has heeded it. They are now ready to face Gehrman and the moon presence, not as a student or a slave, but as an equal who has seen the beginning and the end of the blood. The rise has reached its moral zenith, and the blood-drunk status has been transmuted into divine clarity. The hunter is the king of the scraps, ready to claim the throne of the stars. The 9th chapter in the Chronicle of the Hunter brings the protagonist to the precipice of the infinite. After dismantling the nightmare of Menses and silencing the orphan of Kos, the hunter returns to a sanctuary that is no longer a home. The workshop is engulfed in a metaphysical fire, a cleansing flame that signifies the expiration of the current hunt. The lore of the final audience begins as the plain doll directs the hunter to the foot of the great tree, where Gehrman, the first hunter, awaits in his wheelchair. This is the junction of fate. For the first time since signing the contract in Iosefka's clinic, the hunter is presented with an exit. Gehrman offers a merciful end, to be executed by his blade, to awaken in the sunrise, and to forget the dream entirely. This moment is the ultimate test of the hunter's existential resolve. The lore of the Yharnam sunrise, the choice to submit, represents the failure of the ego. If the hunter accepts Gehrman's mercy, they are effectively surrendering their ascension. The burial blade severs the moon-scented tether, and the protagonist wakes up in the waking world of Yharnam as a blank slate. The lore of the Great Forgetting suggests that while the hunter's body is healed of its original terminal illness, their soul is hollowed. They have seen the gods, they have tasted the cosmos, and they have vomited it out to return to the comfort of the sun. This is the cycle of the status quo. The hunter remains human, but the hunt will simply begin again for another foreigner. The rise of the hunter in this path is revealed to be a circular loop, leading back to the very streets they first crawled through, now a ghost of a hero they cannot remember. However, the choice to refuse Gehrman is the moment the protagonist becomes a sovereign rebel. By standing their ground, the hunter is challenging the host of the dream. The lore of the Duel of the Scythes is the final rite of passage. Gehrman fights not out of hatred, but to protect the hunter from the burden he carries, the eternal imprisonment as the moon presence's puppet. For the protagonist, slaying Gehrman is an act of patricide. They are killing the father to take the throne. The physical toll of this battle is the maximum output of the hunter's anatomy. They are moving with the quickening learned in the nightmare, wielding weapons forged in the fires of the workshop, and fueled by the echoes of every great one they have slain. The rise of the hunter is now a revolution against the very system that created them. The lore of the burial blade's release explains that when Gehrman falls, the dream anchor is broken. But the vacuum left behind is immediately filled by the moon presence, Flora, the god of the pale blood. The descent of this entity is the final inspection. The moon presence descends to retether the hunter. If the protagonist has not consumed the 3/3 of umbilical cord, the moon presence absorbs their will. The hunter is seen in the final frames being pushed in Gehrman's wheelchair by the doll. This is the substitution of the puppet. The protagonist has won the battle but lost the war. They have become the new host, a human battery, for the moon presence's farm. Their rise was merely a recruitment drive. They have ascended to the position of jailer, doomed to wait for the next moon-scented stranger to repeat the cycle. The refusal is thus the most complex part of the hunter's lore because it reveals the tiered reality of the hunt. The protagonist is caught between humanity, the sunrise, slavery, the wheelchair, and divinity, the cords. The lore of the cords of the Great One is the secret shield. By consuming these artifacts throughout the night, one from the wet nurse, one from the abandoned workshop, and one from either Ariana or Iosefka, the hunter has modified their spiritual DNA. They have inoculated themselves against the moon presence's psychic embrace. When the entity reaches out to claim the hunter, a sovereign repulsion occurs. A burst of pale blood light pushes the god back. This is the birth of the new Great One. The hunter is no longer a subject. They are a competitor. This transformation is the climax of the parasitic evolution. The hunter has consumed the parents, the cords, to deny the god. The lore of the honoring of the contract versus the breaking of the chain suggests that the moon presence did not expect the hunter to see the cords. The school of Menses and the church failed to use the cords properly because they sought to talk to the gods. The hunter succeeded because they sought to become the god. The rise of the hunter has officially exited the human paradigm. Their anatomy is now a cocoon of eldritch potential. As the moon presence shrieks in celestial outrage, the final battle, the deicide of the dream, begins. This is not a hunt for echoes. It is a hunt for universal control. The lore of the final arena, the field of white lumen flowers, is significant. These flowers are the sensory organs of the dream. As the hunter and the moon presence clash, the flowers sway in the gale of the soul. The rise of the hunter has ignited the dream. The protagonist is now using arcane tools that tap into the deepest sea and firearms that crack the firmament. They are bleeding the moon. Every drop of blood the moon presence loses is a drop of sovereignty the hunter gains. The fall of the moon presence is the end of the era of blood. The protagonist is cleansing the world by replacing its source. They are the ultimate heretic who has stolen the fire of the stars and is now burning the sky with it. The act concludes with the silence of the god. As the moon presence dissipates into pale blood mist, the hunter stands alone in the burning garden. The contract is terminated. The nightmare is slain. The lore of Part 9 establishes the hunter as the godslayer of the moon. They have survived the mercy of Gehrman and the hunger of the moon. They are heavy with the weight of the universe. As they fall to their knees, their body begins to warp and liquefy. The human form can no longer contain the eldritch pressure. The fall of the protagonist is the birth of the Great One. The cycle of the hunter has ended, and the childhood of the stars has begun. The legacy of the hunter in this chapter is the sovereignty of choice. They were given the blue pill of the sunrise and the red pill of the wheelchair, but they chose the pale blood path of the god. They have outsmarted the cosmos by eating its secrets. The rise has reached its apotheosis. The protagonist is no longer the one who plays the game. They are the one who writes the rules. As the smoke from the workshop rises to meet the new, alien dawn, the hunter prepares for their final form, ready to nurture a world that they have just destroyed. This concludes Part 9 of the 10-part lore of the protagonist. We have explored the final choice, the slaying of Gehrman, the rejection of the moon presence, and the initiation of the final ascension. The final movement in the Chronicle of the Hunter is the total biological and ontological metamorphosis of the protagonist. Upon the defeat of the moon presence, the contract of the blood is not merely fulfilled, it is overwritten. The lore of the final ending, childhood's beginning, represents the absolute rise of the hunter out of the human lineage and their fall into the terrifying, luminous infancy of a great one. This is the ascension of the foreigner. The dying traveler who once sought a simple cure for a terminal illness has, through a night of hyper-evolution, become the very cure for the stagnation of the universe. The protagonist is no longer a hunter. They are the slug god of the new age, a being of iridescent, translucent flesh that represents the next stage of the terrestrial soul. The physical reality of this new form is the centerpiece of the final lore. The hunter has liquefied their human skeletal structure and recast it into a form that can inhabit multiple dimensions simultaneously. This is the sovereignty of the mollusk. In the Bloodborne mythos, the most advanced great ones, like the Ebrietas or the Kos, exhibit marine or invertebrate characteristics, signifying a departure from the rigid logic of mammals. The hunter's transformation into a slug-like infant is the mastery of fluidity. They are now a vessel of infinite potential. The lore of the childhood's beginning achievement explains that the hunter will now lead humanity into its next childhood. This suggests that the protagonist is not just a new god, but a new parent. They have replaced the parasitic moon presence with a symbiotic intent, using their human memory to guide the evolution of those they left behind. Central to this final lore is the doll's eternal nurture. As the plain doll picks up the infant Great One, she gazes upon it with a mixture of maternal recognition and cosmic submission. Her line, "Are you cold? Oh, good hunter," is the bridge of identity. It confirms that even in this alien, squirming form, the spirit of the protagonist remains. The doll, who was the mother of the hunt, has now become the nursemaid of the cosmos. The lore of the dream cradle reveals that the hunter's dream has transitioned from a prison to a nursery. The fall of the workshop and the death of Gehrman were necessary cleansing rites to prepare this space for the holy child. The protagonist has created a safe haven where they can grow in power until they are ready to overwrite the reality of Yharnam with their own eldritch will. The 3/3 of the umbilical cord that the hunter consumed have now fully integrated into their new biology. The lore of the Trinity of Insight explains that these cords provided the genetic code for this birth. The hunter is a composite god. They carry the grief of Murgo, the curse of the orphan, and the ambition of the moon presence. This makes the protagonist the sum of all nightmares. They are the only great one in history who remembers what it feels like to be a human, to feel fear, cold, and the scent of the blood. This human origin is the secret weapon of the New Age. Unlike the other great ones, who were sympathetic in spirit but alien in action, the hunter god possesses empathetic insight. They can dream for humanity because they once slept as one of them. The impact of this ascension on the waking world is the most speculative and profound part of the lore. With the moon presence dead and the hunter ascended, the scourge of the beast loses its metaphysical battery. The long night of Yharnam finally ends, but the city that wakes up is a biological graveyard. The lore of the pale blood dawn suggests that the hunter, from their throne in the dream, will now sow the seeds of a new type of blood. This is the sovereign reformation. The protagonist is the great architect who will ensure that the next civilization does not fall into the same bestial trap as the Themerians or the Healing Church. They are the guardian of the threshold, the one who will watch the gate between the human and the divine. The rise of the hunter is the protection of the future. Furthermore, the identity of the infant raises questions about the loss of the self. Is the hunter still the foreigner who arrived at the clinic, or has that person been digested by the cosmos? The lore of the transcendental paradox suggests that the protagonist is now a collective consciousness. They are the echoes of every hunter they killed, the runes of every truth they found, and the blood of every god they drank. They have become a living record of the hunt. They are the history of Yharnam condensed into a single, glowing organism. This makes the protagonist the monolith of memory. They will never forget the night, ensuring that the sins of the church are never repeated. The fall of their human ego was the price for universal vigilance. The plain doll smile in the final frames is the seal of the story. For the first time, she seems complete. Her purpose was to find a worthy heir to the dream, and in the protagonist, she has found a god who can love. The lore of the doll's devotion implies that she will tend to the hunter for eons, protecting the infant until it reaches its maturity. When the hunter finally matures, the dream will likely expand to encompass all of reality. This is the final objective of the Great Ones, to find a surrogate that can replace the world. The protagonist is the perfect surrogate. They have won the game by becoming the board upon which the next game will be played. The chronicle concludes with the stillness of the new dawn. The hunter's mark, the symbol of the protagonist's bondage, is now a sovereign rune. It no longer signifies a sacrifice, but a signatory. The hunter has signed the world with their own existence. The lore of Part 10 establishes the protagonist as the alpha and the omega of the night. They have survived the clinic, the cathedral, the nightmare, and the gods. They are moon-scented no more. They are the source of the scent. The rise has ended in a new beginning, and the fall has ended in a final peace. The stranger is home, and the child is awake. The legacy of the hunter is the triumph of the will over the blood. They proved that a human, driven by insight and armed with will, can exceed the stars. They have turned a contract of death into a covenant of life. As the screen fades to black, the cries of the night are replaced by the silence of the cradle. The hunt is over, the dream is eternal, and the hunter is finally truly great.